welcome to another episode of Conversation with a Chef. I'm Jo Ritty and I love sharing with you the conversations I get to have with talented and passionate chefs. It's the backstory, if you will, to the food they're putting up. I begin today by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, traditional custodians of the lands and airwaves where this conversation takes place. Land which was never ceded. Land where communities came together to eat seasonally, locally and without exhausting resources. I pay my respects to their elders past, present and rising. Today I'm talking to Ben Parkinson at Pipi's Kiosk. I went into Pipi's halfway through May to talk to co-owner and chef Jordan Clay. I am a long-time fan of Pipi's because of its setting right on the beach looking out across Port Phillip Bay and, of course, because of the food. When I spoke to Jordan, I just put an offer in on an apartment in Port Melbourne and I thought to myself, imagine if I get this and I can just walk down the beach and have a glass of wine and some fish at Pipi's. So, when we were successful with the apartment and got over the move, that's exactly what I did. Ben is head chef at Pipi's and on the day I went in for that living life like it's golden moment, he had a sardine special on that blew my mind. Actually did. Plump, butterflied sardines served with lardo on pickled daikon and grated frozen kumquat. Dish of the year so far. So, of course, I suggested to Ben that I come back and have a chat with him. He graciously accepted, even coming in on his day off, which we discussed, along with his thoughts on chef life, why he thinks cooking is a craft and not an art, but he absolutely loves it, and of course we discussed the sardines. Ben is thoughtful and articulate and clearly passionate about what he does, and I could have talked to him for hours. We certainly packed a lot into an hour, and you are in for a treat. Hi, how are you?
Great, how are you?
Good, thank you.
I like your earrings.
Thank you, yes. My
Coffee?
I love a coffee.
What?
How's your day been?
Pretty relaxing if I'm honest.
It's good.
It's been a nice surprise. Like I said the other week, Mondays I try to have as a proper day off and not really talk to anybody, be it reps, be it, otherwise this job can be all consuming at times.
Oh, I get that. So thank you. I appreciate it.
It's I suppose I should sort of phrase that a bit differently. It's more, if I make the choice to, it's different,
Yeah.
Whereas sometimes it's just like places I work, if you don't make or have the intention to make time for yourself, you never will.
That's what Jason said down at Stokehouse as well, is one of the ways that he ensures well-being for staff is that's a thing they actually, they pointedly say is don't look at your phone on your day off. It must be hard though.
Yeah, I mean, Jason would want that for his guys, but I guarantee you he's on call 24/7.
Yeah.
So it's different depending on the role that you have, obviously, which I think that's kind of a given. It's like in any job. But there also has to be, you have to be able to turn around and say, you know what, I need time for me,
Yeah.
The joys of us here being closed Monday, Tuesday, it makes that easier. So even for Jordan and myself, or even Tommy, the front of house business owner, restaurant manager, director, whatever hat he's wearing on the day, we all know that if there's something we need to discuss, we'll make time to discuss it. But otherwise, Tommy's got a young family and Jordan's got a partner and a life and all the rest of it. So if you don't sort of carve that time out,
Absolutely.
you'll never see them. More so I would say than your regular job, for want of a.
Oh, look, absolutely, and I'm not going to compare teaching to hospitality at all. But there is.
You still take work home with you, and quite a lot of it.
Yeah, and there's also an expectation from parents and students that they can contact you at any time, and so we've got some really strict protocols around that as well. And I think that it's important, and it's good if the place that you work supports you on that as well, by putting in those protocols, and that there is an understanding that you don't need to reply to them on that day or whatever it is. So
it's one of the best things, or one of the great things that Tommy and Jordan are both very adamant and passionate about is the three of us have all worked for restaurants and the industry, for want of a better term, for places which weren't that.
Yeah.
you know. And I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, and he was telling me about a restaurant that expects staff to forage on their days off, and if they don't, they kind of get treated poorly and all this sort of stuff. And it's just like, there's no space for that in the industry anymore, personally, in my opinion. And I don't mean to say that to like put people offside or things, but it's just like, you either value your staff or you don't. You value their time or you don't.
Yeah.
Where's the exploitative line? You know, the industry is changing and growing and transitioning. You look at Nova, for instance, if you want to use that as a archetype, they've even registered now and said, hey, you know, we want to pay our stages and things like that. So that whole you should be grateful for the opportunity to work here is kind of in the bin, or at least it's on the curb. It's waiting, you know, it's at the door. It's waiting to be taken out of the bin. I wouldn't say it's there yet, but I would largely say the industry is transitioning towards a more of a like, well, we respect you, we appreciate you, and therefore we value you. So we do expect a lot from you when you're working. That is just unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your headspace, the job. It's an all-encompassing position, whether you're a young cook or commis waiter through to, you know, a more senior role. Like it takes all parts of you, you know, but it doesn't mean it takes your life.
And that's right, and it's interesting too, just when you were saying that, I was thinking about lots of places, and I think even just because I've been really immersed in watching 2 seasons of The Bear, like binge watching, so that's all in my head, you know, and they talk about the staff meal as family meal, I suppose, and some businesses do talk about, you know, we're all family here, but I think that can be a dangerous road to go down as well.
Yes, I mean,
it's
you
not
know,
your family.
you can't you can choose your friends, you can't choose your family.
And you want to be
Families
a tight
can,
unit,
yes,
but not.
Families can be dysfunctional, and you don't have a choice in the matter.
Yeah, that's right.
We can. That's the joy of Christmas. That's the joy of, you know, we all have funny stories and anecdotes about our families, which are humorous, but also like they make you kind of cringe a bit. But that's also because that's your family. Your workplace and your friends and everything like that should largely be a choice. Should largely be, I respect you, I value you, I want to grow with you. So that's why we're having a shared meal. That's why we're carving out time to have that meal. You know, not the opposite of that the opposite of that with the family being, well, we will almost abusive family dynamic, for want of a less extreme term, be it we will take advantage of you and use all we can because we're using this rhetoric as a guise to hide behind. You know? So that, I'm not saying this to create issues or
Not at all. It's
to get people offside, but it's just, I've worked in my own experience, let's put it that way, for places that have, to put it bluntly, taken the piss of my time. And I've also worked for places which have prioritised it, you know? And I know where I've done my better work. And I feel like that's kind of, that the proof's in the pudding, for want of a less cooking-based cliche, you know?
That's right. So, how long have you been at Pipi's?
Let's round it to 2 years, just over 2 years.
Okay. And you were in Sydney before that?
Yes.
Yeah. Where are you from originally?
Brisbane.
Oh, Brisbane. Okay.
Yes. I'm all over the shop type, you know, done my fair share of travel down the East Coast. The only one I haven't done yet is Tasmania, but who knows?
It's a bit like New Zealand with all its, you know, food and...
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I actually haven't even been to Tasmania. Let alone work down there, so that's why it's actually one of my pressing engagements to do this year in November. There's a race down there I want to go compete in, and I'm going to use that as a bit of a chance to go run up a hill, literally, and see some very good friends down there, and eat and drink and embrace, shall we say.
Amazing. Yeah,
from Brisbane, what feels like a lifetime ago now.
And so So little Ben, did you always know you wanted to be
Nope.
a chef? What was food for you when you were growing up in Brisbane?
Food's always had. Food's always been a big part of my family. Not in the, nonnas making passata, sort of that kind of veil, but my grandmother, who turned 92 last week, has always put an emphasis on it in the family. She was what we would call a hospitality teacher this day and age, but one of the first ones in Queensland, like ever.
Wow.
At a women's finishing school, and then in a, she's...
Wow.
I wouldn't necessarily call her a pioneer because she'd probably flog me around the back of the head for saying so. And even to this day, I wouldn't go against her. But she has always had a love for food. And I can remember growing up from, earliest memories, fortnightly the family all coming together, be it at my house or my home, my grandparents or my aunt and uncle's house on a weekend, and having a meal, and all us kids racing around and running around like lunatics as you do. And there always being a plethora of food and cakes, and my grandfather baked bread, and I vividly remember flambéed peaches one year.
Wow.
When Jamie Oliver was just becoming a thing, it sounds very silly and it sounds very cliched, and it sounds kind of to me almost like, oh, whatever, it's another chef using his family story, right? But that was never like, I want to cook.
No.
In high school, you can ask my parents or anybody that knew me from back then, I wanted to be a vet.
Oh.
I was adamant I wanted to be a vet. That was my whole goal in life. I love animals, always have, but that was my goal. And then, just to cut a very, very long story short, I was looking for a part-time job, as you do when you're a high schooler getting to a certain age. At the end of sort of grade 10, I would have been 14. And an ad went up at school in our hospitality class saying there's a local functions that are looking for front of house and back of house staff members. I was like, okay, cool, I'll jump in front of house. I was guided into the kitchen by the owner. And to this day, I'm incredibly grateful for that and to that job, because I got initiated into a kitchen with, it was me and a chef. And he, from the first couple of weeks, just was kind of like, yeah, cool, let's get you involved. So it was making Duchess potatoes, it was doing quite classic style of things, but as a 14-year-old, just kind of like, hey, we need your help. And that definitely grew my love of hospitality, because there was no shouting, screaming, or nothing. It just wasn't that. It wouldn't have been tolerated. And I was very welcomed in. And I kind of, let's say, by the end of the year, sort of a couple of months in, because I started there on last term of the year, I was hooked.
Wow.
I was just like, this is for me. And then... too many years later, I'm still doing it. I've never done anything else. I've never been to university. I've never looked at any other profession. I've never even had any other form of job, period, than working in a kitchen.
Have you had any times where you thought, maybe I'd like to find something else?
Too many, not too many to count, but yes.
Yeah.
There's, that's life, right? But I kind of also got to a point where I realised how lucky I was.
Oh.
When I was a lot younger, I definitely thought like, I could go to uni and do this or do that or whatever. And my family has a doctor, a lawyer. My mother works in medicine. My uncle works in medicine. My father did a lot for Sports Med Australia. You can see where this is going type thing, like, very academically based family. They were never begrudging to it. They were always very supportive. But definitely when I was in my younger 20s, like working, 70 to 90 hours a week and things like that, there were definite times where I was like, do I really love this? And I thought about it, but every time I kind of had those thoughts, something would always kind of happen, whether it be myself making the change of going overseas or moving states or, and really not reigniting the passion, but continuing it, or something just fortuitous would happen and that would, And then I got to an age where I realised how lucky I was when I was looking around at a lot of friends and things like that, you know, they were my age and they've had 2 or 3 different careers. And that's nothing against them, or, you know, everyone's got their own path and all that sort of stuff, but I realised kind of actually how fortunate I was to, at 14 years old, walk into a profession that I have fell in love with and have continued for, you know, my life, period.
Absolutely, but also it gives you that that opportunity to go to different countries and to work in different kinds of restaurants. And this whole idea of academia and whatnot, it's a funny one, because this is something that's come up a bit, and this is not what you're saying, but I just think about these chefs that say to me, and maybe in the next generation from you, who were told at school, you're no good at school, you should become a chef. I just do not get that, because there's so much involved with being a chef. I just think about all of the things you do, and there's no way I could do any of the things that you do. This whole, especially when you're a head chef, you've got to think about, well, all the way up, but a head chef, you've got to think about food costs, you've got to thinking about the menu, you're thinking about seasons, you're thinking about staffing and well-being and all, and then there's so much you're thinking, and then there's all that pressure of time and putting up all different plates at different, like, I honestly, then I see these chefs that just, you know, go and do a starter somewhere, or go and do like a collaboration with someone and step into someone else's kitchen, and they just do it, and I can't even get my head around that.
I'm actually due to do one of those in about a month.
Wow.
So, yeah.
It's so impressive.
Thank you. Not for myself, but for other people that are actually good at their jobs.
What are you talking about?
But that's definitely something I've seen in my time, is a transition of kind of the lens of how we view hospitality.
Yes.
And love it or loathe it. MasterChef is a great arbiter for that.
Yeah,
it has shone a light on the industry and food, and therefore, so, you know, people have started to understand that there's a lot more going on than just the creation side of it, or the ego, or whatever it may be. You know, it's I would say like a multidisciplinary job. I wouldn't personally call it an art form, because I don't personally feel like it is. Yes, it is creative, but I would see it more as a craft.
That's so funny, because that's exactly what Annie Smithers says. And I love her.
She's a legend.
And she's a legend. And I said to her, you know, she was one of my first, you know, back in the early days. And she went, it's not an art form. It's, what'd she say? It's a trade. I was like, but come on.
But I mean, I would personally see it similar to a cabinet maker or a woodworker or a mason or something like that, in the sense of, like, yes, you're working with your hands, yes, it has an element of creativity to it, but it is also something at the most basic level, it is a craft. It is, we can teach you technique, we can teach you recipe, we can get you to a certain standard, and you can replicate this time and time again.
But can people? Do you think?
Yes. I not to be crude, but you can teach anybody to cook. I mean, Ratatouille, that movie, is incredibly accurate in the sense that, you know, you can teach anybody to cook. It's whether they want to, it's whether they care, and it's whether they have the discipline to continue to repetition. It's 1,000 hours, isn't that what they say?
Oh,
or
absolutely.
10,000 hours?
Absolutely. Well, there's that, but then there's also the fact of doing it every night in a restaurant and wanting to do it. I mean, you can teach someone to cook, but that's different too.
That definitely leads me to an analogy, which I probably can't say on this podcast, from one of the first chefs I ever worked for. It was, let me paraphrase it really very loosely, which was something along the lines of, you can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink. But by God, I'm going to drown you.
Okay.
He meant it in the most best of ways,
Yeah.
In the sense of, like, you know, you will, and I look back on it now, and I'm grateful for definitely what he taught me. Cooking is a craft in its crux, in my opinion. The actual physicality of cooking.
Sure.
My brother, bless him, is an okay cook. But him recently, for instance, to give you some context, has been trying to figure out how to cook a perfect steak at home. And he's gone through all manner of YouTube videos and tutorials and all, and some of the stuff he's seen, I'm like, why would you ever do that? But he doesn't know, because he hasn't done it, for instance, like myself, or like other cooks that have done it for thousands of times, millions of times. But I've been able to then give him input and advice to now where he can do it perfectly. I mean, he's cooking one of them, so it's a lot easier.
Yes.
However, I would not say has the creative understanding or the training and experience to therefore look at it in a creative aspect. To him, a steak is a piece of meat. It's delicious, but that's all it is and all it ever will be. You know, that's where the creation or the art, if you will, I would say more the creativity comes in, that's where it comes in. You can teach anybody to cook, but it's then them interpreting it and putting their own voice on it.
So interesting you say that, because I was speaking to a chef yesterday, and Ollie at Henrietta, and he was saying how, you know, when it came to cooking Middle Eastern food, he watched lots of YouTube videos and the nonna's doing it. So, but that's interesting, because if I just watched those, I wouldn't come to it with the same, I wouldn't just be able to do that, whereas a chef who's got the training might watch YouTube videos to like give them another insight, but then knows the technique behind it to, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. It's the kind of like, with the experience becomes the lens of perspective and understanding. So you can look at a technique that you see online and you might not necessarily know the recipe, but you can extrapolate it yourself to be like, okay, I can understand how they've gotten there, but then how do I get there in my own voice?
Yeah.
How do I get there in my own way that is reflective of myself and my values? But even then, personally, I feel like that's putting too much emphasis on it. At the end of the day, it's food. Ben Shuri said it years ago best, it all turns to shit in 24 hours. You know? Like, it's a crude way of looking at it, but I vividly remember that quote from him because it's true.
Yeah, Philippa Sibley's also said
yes,
that to
it's
me.
something that a lot of people have said that same, you know, like, I've had various chefs say it similar ways to me over the years as well. It's like, because without divulging too much, I have a chronic overthinker. And a mentor of mine have once said to me, is like, Benny, just stop thinking about it, just do it. You know? And I still talk to the man even this day. But that's, yeah, I mean, everybody has their different lens for cooking, and some people see it more as a creative, some people see it more as an art form, but I see it more as a craft that has a creative voice to it, that you can put a creative lens on.
Yes, and look, it has to be delicious. And tell me about, let's just talk about that sardine dish, because that's craft at its finest.
Thank you, I really appreciate that.
No, I'm serious. I'm not doing it to flatter you. That dish. Just so, where do you go? So you're thinking, okay, where do you go? Where do you come from? Where do you start when you are creating a special like that? For a dish like that, where does it start?
My love of sardines, and if I'm perfectly honest, the 2 years I spent in England working for a guy called Alistair Brooke Taylor, who's back in Australia, actually in Beechworth. We did sardines there. We got them on day boats, and we served them completely differently to that. But it was just, I remember how we treated them there, and I always loved them, and his food, and he taught me so much. And yeah, there's a long story there in history which we won't go into, unfortunately. But that's where it started from. Was my sardines were on offer, fresh. I love them. I have a history of working with, and that was number one. I wanted to serve sardines. And then I really like the contrast of like that oily fish with like some fat or pork fat or something like that. So hence there was the addition of the lardo. So to kind of balance it. So you've got that oiliness, you've got that really, you know, kind of not enriched flavour, but that oily, almost sometimes verging on bitter with sardines. That then you can balance with the fat. And then I'm like, I want something fresh. I need something sort of textural as well, because otherwise that's quite one-dimensional. And so pickled daikon came from an influence of something Jordan's done here and done a few times. It's kind of one of his little sneaky snacks, shall we say, which we do pickled daikon with sea urchin. But we serve it like you would a nigiri, so all like bundled up and everything. But I love that texture and that flavour of the daikon, so I was like, that would work quite well. And then citrus is obviously in right now. So in my mind, I'm like, well, kumquats are amazing. I love kumquats. That's a whole other memory of my grandmother, me eating them off the tree and her getting very, very angry at me because it was only this small tree in a pot plant and I would just eat them whole off the tree. My grandfather would be encouraging me to do so, but then be like, shh, don't tell her. So I love kumquats and citrus when it's in. And that's kind of, I know it sounds a bit kind of silly, but that's kind of how my brain works, at least with food, is it starts with like, what do I want to showcase, or what do I want to eat, how do I want to eat this, and then it will kind of just run its own way and pick things and think about things. I'm not very organic or formulaic in how I create food. It's very disjointed, it's very chaotic sometimes, that I will pick a piece of a food, let's say, whether it be vegetable or whatever, or a pastry, and sometimes it will be because I have a very myopic idea that is just, I want to do this, and then I will make sure everything works around it. Or other times it's like the sardine dish was, where it's just quite organic and I want to eat them, but I want to balance it with something fatty, something pickled, something textural, almost just ticking the boxes, of like, well, in a classic style, let's go back to my apprenticeship. It's like, well, you need to have garnish, you need to have a meat, you need to have a sauce, you need to have, it was almost in my head ticking those boxes of like, you need to have something pickled, something fresh, something fatty, something, to balance all that out. And that's not to try and make it sound simple, but for me, that was just a very organic dish that I just felt would work. Unfortunately, it did. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes I can have such a myopic view of wanting to do something, and no matter how hard you try, it can not. And that's also the other side that maybe people don't talk about, which is why I look at it more as a craft. Is it's like, you can want a dish to work, and in your head it does, but that doesn't mean it does. You've also got to think about the restaurant that you're serving it in, the clientele that you're working to, the seasonality, the size of your kitchen, how many staff you've got. There's all those elements which are all part of the equation. You can't just turn to your team and say, hey, I want to do this dish, forsaking all others, whether it's going to cause you and the restaurant issues just to get this one piece of perfection.
Yeah.
You've got to be aware of the human equation, for want of a better way of putting it, that you can't inflict a poorly designed dish on your kitchen just because your ego says, I want to serve this, so we will achieve it.
Right.
That's almost, I would think, a reflection of a bygone era of kitchens where it's, we'll flog the kitchen to death, just get the head chef's vision, which, that causes a myriad of issues.
Are those ideas forthcoming? So if you how often do you change the menu? How often do you do specials?
The specials can be, the special for us here is generally there'll be one or two on a day or a night or a service, shall we say, depending on, we get a call from Two Hands, the fish supplier, and what they're getting, this week. I know they've got Nanagai coming in and things like that. And so then it's like, well, what do I, how am I feeling? Or it can just be a conversation that Jordan and I have, or Harry, our apprentice, or Dave, or even Tommy front of house, we'll be talking and we'll be like, actually, so for us, we're quite fortunate due to the size of the venue that we only are 38 seats thereabouts. We have the ability to change and kind of do specials easier than you'll do at bigger venues. But we reprint even our a la carte menu weekly, because things change. And because of the size of us, if we get a call from our fish guys saying, hey, this didn't come in this morning, but we've got, for instance, we don't have flathead, we've got lovely dory. It's like, great, we'll take the dory, let's do it. So we'll do the current dish on the menu, which is sauce grenoblat with confit celeriac, and John Dory. And that was sort of came out of a bit of a quick change of us having to think on the fly a little, as a special, and then we kind of tweaked it and we were really happy with it. We're like, well, actually, let's move this to the menu. It also just keeps myself engaged. It keeps the team engaged because there's something different for them to see, to learn, to do. The places I've worked in my career which changed the menu more regularly were definitely the ones where I felt more fulfilled and challenged. So I think to myself, well, and even now, you know, like if that's how I feel, surely I would think in their own way, that's how our team feels. You know, you don't just want to become a robot that's serving the same thing day in, day out. Like that's, at least for me, I don't find that enjoyable at all. And without speaking for him, I would almost say Jordan feels 100% the same way. You know, that creates an atmosphere in the kitchen that's fun and interesting and engaging because there's always something new to try, to do, to talk about, you know, to engage with the people, with the guys, you know, and get input from them. It's like, hey, what do you think of this? How can we change that? How can we trace this? Yo, you've got an idea that, you know, like it just creates a more interesting dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you were in England. Did you anywhere else overseas?
I did a year in Paris.
Oh, whereabouts in Paris?
I started off at a place called Restaurant Papillon by Christophe Santin. He was the former exec chef of Le Maurice and Plaza Athénée for Alain Ducasse for a very long time.
Wow.
Yeah. I walked in there.
Do you speak French?
I did not. I now speak even less than Jordan.
Because I tested him. I won't test you.
No, I can get by in a kitchen, let's put it that way. So, yeah, I went over. A very good friend of mine always in the process of setting up his own restaurant. But he went over to do the year working holiday visa. And for 2 or 3 months, he badgered me saying, hey, you should come over, you should come over, you should come over. So I did. I had a very supportive partner at the time, which was... probably didn't give her enough credit to say that she's definitely one of the reasons why I bit the bullet and went over, because she was so supportive of it. And about 2 weeks out from getting on the plane, visas all organised, all this sort of stuff, the mate of mine that was over there sort of sat in the measure and be like, all right, well, now that you're coming, here's the truth. It's incredibly hard to find somewhere to live. It's incredibly hard to get a bank account. It's you know, like, in a funny, jovial way, because at the end of it is like, but I'll help you with all of it.
Yeah.
So I went over there completely, like, I'd never left the country at this point.
So when was that?
2015, 2016.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and middle of 2016. I went over there, had a list of restaurants I wanted to go sort of check out. The usual ones that a lot of people looked into, especially back then, you know, like Septime, things like that. Like if you don't speak a word of French, Septime will not even touch you. They will not even entertain the fact, you know, but it's fine. You know, you're working to a level like that. I get it now, but at the time I was like... but then there was this restaurant which had only been open maybe a couple of months called Papillon, based upon the classic novel about the prisoner on the island and all that sort of. That's where the name came from, but it also, you know, nicely means butterfly in French. I still actually have one of our... I think I still do, bizarrely. Whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, have a menu clip, as was the logo.
That's cute.
And I remembered seeing the food that they were doing, and obviously I read about Christophe, their head chef and owner, and I just thought, stuff it, I'll apply there, thinking, you know, there's no way this place is going to give an Australian that doesn't speak a word of French a go. Christophe got back to me and was like, hey, you know, like, we just had a guy leave. What's your French like? And I lied to him and was like, yeah, it's okay, you know, like I can speak a little bit, you know, like he spoke fluent English. Everybody in the kitchen except the chef de cuisine spoke fluent English, which was kind of a funny story. But I went in there, met Christophe, and he has a incredible passion for AC/DC.
Oh.
To the point of, like, bizarreness. Like, when he first said, oh, you know AC/DC, I thought he was just being, you know, like that typical, oh, you're Australian, I've heard of this band once. No. This guy knew all the minor details, knew all their nitty-bitty bits about them, knew everything about the band, had seen them a couple of times, you know, like, But that was a way in, essentially. I remember starting it on my first day. I was told to start at 8:30. I turned up and everyone had been there from about 6:30, 7 o'clock. So I was already an hour and a half late in their eyes, so that was fun. But I only did 6 months there, but it taught me so much and I met so many great people. We sat down for 2 staff meals a day, lunch and dinner.
Wow.
Christoph would physically drag you out of the kitchen to make sure you sat down and ate and took some time to yourself. He wouldn't have it. He's like, he still expected your work to get done and all this sort of stuff, but he was also very like, well, no, I'm going to sit down with you, like my partner is, the front of house guy, like I want you to stop, I want you to eat. So there was a very good emphasis on a quality of staff meal and a plan for it and all this sort of stuff. But the guys I met there were phenomenal. It was hard working a section when you don't speak really any French, let alone table numbers, let alone learning the menu, but of that small group that I worked with there, the chef de cuisine who didn't speak a word of English yet, we got along through his love of Biggie Smalls. He could rap every word to any Biggie Smalls song that came on, but couldn't actually string an English sentence together.
Wow.
And his love of football. We just somehow talked about football because the Euro was on at the time. He now has a 1-star restaurant in Lille. And then Valentina started with us, she's in the process of opening her own restaurant in Lille as well. And then Milo, who I probably would not have succeeded at this restaurant if it wasn't for this guy, is running a resort. I can't even remember where. In like a little French principality, so to speak, like in the North Africa, that kind of part of the world. But they're all so welcoming, and I mean, they had fun sometimes at my expense about the Australian, like I vividly remember Alan Passard coming in for dinner. Because he knew Christoph, because, they're all from that world, and I vividly remember Christoph bringing him in and saying to him in French, this is our surfer, he's the Australian type stuff. Yeah. And I was just like in awe of Alan Passard, that I was just like, but I learnt a lot, and also just the way Christoph looked at food. Someone coming from such a high-end hardcore, he'd only ever really done 2 or 3 star his whole career, to now serving it kind of like a bistro-y, brasserie, wanting to put more emphasis on quality of food, but still also like making sure it's at least somewhat healthy, and the guest experience, and a bit more jovial and a bit more interactive and fun. There was always music pumping in the kitchen and in the dining room. At one point he had a, like to my shoulder, so we'll say like a metre and a bit, figurine of the Flash in the restaurant, just because he wanted to, it was very much, this is my space now, I want to do with it as I see fit, which was very cool. I left there after about 6 months, and the partner that was supportive to get me over there came back to Australia, and life took its toll. And Jordan, funnily enough, was in Paris at the same time, and I had lunch with him and the guy that convinced me to get over there, and there was a restaurant in Belgium called Inderwolf, which had just put an ad up on Instagram or a call out for a chef de party, and I was like, I'd never get it taken there, blah blah blah, and they'd never accept me, type thing, because the restaurant was closing. And Hans and Jordan both said to me at lunch at Le Comptoir, go home, apply for it, if you get it, we'll pay for your train ticket to get you there, and we'll give you somewhere to store all your stuff.
So obviously you got it.
Yes. Well, I didn't get the job, but they gave me a stage to finish. But they gave me accommodation and all that sort of stuff included.
Cool. Was that in the Flemish-speaking part?
Yeah. On the French-Belgian border. The books on the shelf over there. And it was fortunately, I would think, because of Alistair, the guy who's now in Beechworth, he was the chef de cuisine, or the shed chef de cuisine, with a guy called Gabby, who's also an absolute legend. He's from Canberra, he's from Australia, so he knew the restaurants that were on my resume that I sent through, so it wasn't such a like, who is this guy? I was like, as a stage, and I did, I want to say September through to December when they closed. And that was a very pinnacle point in changing my view on food, my view on kitchens, because for such a big kitchen, there was no yelling, no screaming, no bullying, no nothing. It was just regimented, but not in like a militarized zone, more in just kind of like, well, okay, when we clean the floors, this is how we do it. This person does that. It was just, it was regimented in like a respectful way, I think. When they sit you down, when you start on your first day, they're like, hey, even if you are a stars, we expect you to do the role of a chef de partie. You treat everybody with respect. If you need to talk to the person calling the pass, which was Gabby during service, you don't scream that across the kitchen. You say, Gabby, may I? And you wait for him to return to talk to you. There was just those sorts of things in place that it was just, there's no need to yell or to scream or to slam fridges or, some of the things that happen in kitchens that are just considered okay. It was just like, no, there's no need for that. It doesn't make you better at your job. And just the food that I'd never seen anything like it, and just being there for the closure of that. We had everybody in from Sergio Herman through to Rene Redzepi through to Inaki, Bertrand, so Chateaubriand and Sep team, Atushi Tanaka from, like everybody was coming to get there one last time type thing.
Wow.
I've met some lifelong friends, which I would say pretty much all of them have gone on to do some amazing things. But it just changed my perception of kitchens.
So for you, that step of going overseas was a really important part of your journey?
I would almost, for want of a better way of looking at it, see it as like a finishing school, if you will, if you want to look at it that way. I had a chef even refer to it that way to me once. Nobu was just kind of like, because he actually did a lot of time working in New Zealand as well. He went to France and worked at Robuchon, and he didn't speak a word of French at the time. But for me, it was just that kind of, that goal, but I didn't want to there's nothing wrong with it, but personally, I didn't want to do the typical, shall I say, Australian chef goes to London. I know some amazing cooks that have done that and excelled at it and doing amazing things now, and they're good friends of mine. But for me, that just didn't feel right. I wanted to do something different, so I went to Paris, and then I went to Belgium, and then I went back to Paris, and then came back to Australia and to England and blah blah blah.
So when you were in England, you weren't in London, or?
No, I was in the middle of West Yorkshire.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good accent.
There were a few farmers that we dealt with there that I did not understand a single word they said. Like, they dropped off animals to us because we dealt only in whole rare breed animals at this restaurant. And they'd pull up in the truck after collecting it from the abattoir and things like that. And I swear to God, I'd just look at them and just be like, I'm going to get one of the local kids for you because cool. Yep. And then they just open the truck great. And I'd be like, oh, you're here to drop off the lamb. Oh, awesome. Yeah, nice. Thanks, mate.
Love it.
Yeah, so that was with Alistair and his partner Amy.
Yeah.
Who I met. He was the chef de cuisine in Belgium, and she was the somm, or the restaurant manager, the somm in Belgium.
Wow.
And it was their own space. To this day, I don't know anybody that does food like Al. The way he looks at it, the way he thinks about it, the way he does, it's, yeah.
Have you been to see him in Beechworth?
No, he's only just been back, I think about a month.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and just the way he worked, and he ran the kitchen. He was very much one of the key people, that was, there's no need for shouting, there's no need, you can just talk, be respectful, be kind, you still work incredibly hard, but he was definitely always a push for what is now considered, I suppose, the new way of doing things, but for him it just always seemed like that's just who he was. He's got misos now out in Beechworth, as far as I know, that are like 10 years old, that he made, when he was working out there years ago.
Wow.
That he stored at someone's house.
That's amazing.
Wow. Yeah,
it's forward thinking.
But that's this guy. But let's not, I don't want to get caught up on Al. I have so much respect and
tell me about
as a man, but
So it seems like you've got another passion in running, and it feels like that could be a metaphor for kitchens as well. Are you a sprinter or a long distance? Well, there you go.
I cannot sprint to save my life. Put me anything 10 k's and above, and I'm very happy. Tell me to sprint 200 metres, I'll do it, but I will not enjoy it.
So do the two coexist then? Like, because I feel like it's a marathon in the kitchen and you need fitness and everything. Am I pushing too far?
Maybe pushing, but I definitely think a lot of chefs all have, without sounding, cliched again, you get to that point in this job where, whether it be running or golf or cycling, or I think it's more you look for a pursuit that is kind of all-encompassing, because your job is just that. It's all-encompassing. And it takes up every bit of focus, or bouldering even, is another one, which I do a bit. But you find that outlet or that avenue that you can't really think about much else.
Yeah.
Or if you can, it's in a way that is kind of like free-flowing thought, when I'm running, I can work through stuff in my head, I can work through dishes, I can not, and it's never like I'm going to go for a run to figure this dish out, but your brain works differently, and so that's why I definitely enjoy it. And also it's just, as you all get older, we all start to realise we actually have to look after our bodies.
Yeah.
And especially in this job where you're asking a lot of it, So I enjoy running because it's a disconnect, but also because I feel better for it. My headspace is better for it, which is a large factor. But I don't know, it's also, I'm doing the Sandy Point in about 2.5 weeks. I did the Great Ocean Road in half, which was amazing. Like running along the Great Ocean Road with no cars and you're running down, it's a pretty picturesque, great part of the world to say, hey, I've run along that road.
Absolutely.
Yeah. By the end of it, I was definitely, because I was sick the week of doing it, it wasn't a great way to, but just to enjoy that, and just that disconnect from everything. It's like, what are you doing right now? Well, I'm going to put some music on, turn my phone on to Do Not Disturb, and go slog out 10, 15, 20 Ks.
Yeah, look, I like exercising, but that doesn't sound that enjoyable to me. But I'm glad that you love it. That's good.
Don't worry, Jordan thinks the same.
Well, look, with all that in mind, because you've had lots of experiences and you seem to, you're obviously a very thoughtful human in the way that you did say overthink, but I think, let's say, thoughtful about the way that you approach cooking and life. What would your advice be to someone who was thinking about becoming a chef?
Thinking about becoming a chef? I would say watch Jamie Oliver, The Naked Chef, the originals. I mean, that definitely had an influence on me. I know it's definitely had an influence on other cooks in my generation. Not for any other reason, but that those early series where he was sliding down the spiral staircase and introducing the world to Parma ham, as silly as it all sounds, and we look back at it now with a bit of a laugh and a giggle, right? But I know for me, it was interesting and engaging because the format was different and new. Because if you're thinking about becoming a chef, so you kind of use that as a gauge to do you actually like food? Because this job will chew you up and spit you out if you don't be careful, and if you don't love it, and if you don't really love it. The days where you've had not really much sleep, you've got a full restaurant, the dishwasher's broken, you're the young apprentice that's now got to do the dishes and hold the section down. If you don't really love what you're doing, it's gonna hurt. Even if you do, it's not going to hurt any less. But I've come to realize, at least in myself, there's no other way to put it. I do apologize. This job, Be it the cooking, be it the social interaction, be it the guests, be it, the whole thing. I really, really do. And if you're thinking of becoming a chef, eat as much as you can, cook at home as much as you can, and then get some experience in a kitchen. Generally, I mean, from my own experience, I would say in a hotel. There's more to see. I did my apprenticeship at a hotel, and you can see how a pastry section works, how a banqueting section works, how a bistro works, how a fine diner works. I mean, that was where I was. I never did the pastry section because Zorica wouldn't allow me. But you can see more. And also, I mean, good or bad, it also gives you the ability as a young cook starting out. This is going to sound somewhat terrible, but you won't be necessarily as relied on as heavily initially. So you can make more mistakes, which is the only way to learn. That's just from my own experience. Then when I look back on my apprenticeship, the fact that I could do 150 people banquets, you know, the fine dining restaurant, the pool bar, the buffet, you know, like, depending on what kitchen I was in, I wasn't relied on to do much initially. It was, hey, slice some meats, do some salads, whatever. And then if I wanted more and pushed more, yeah, I got put into the fine diner, you know, like I got to progress more. But it also meant that it wasn't like some places where I've heard of, you know, the horror stories of the industry where you've got a young apprentice who just gets flogged to death, never really gets off a section, never really gets to progress anywhere, and is just kind of used as cheap labour. That's definitely stereotyping the industry at large. But I would say as a young cook, watch The Naked Chef just for a laugh. Eat as much as you can in all varying types of ways you can, and get some work experience. That's what I did once I started doing my job in the kitchen. I did some work experience at the place that I took my apprenticeship at. You know, I did a week on my own school holidays to do, you know, work experience at this place. And that definitely, you know, introduced me to some cool people that I know even now. Very good friends. This is 17, 18 years ago. I think it's a different thing of wanting to become a chef and a young chef are two very different things. So wanting, I would say that consume as much as you can, whether it be TikTok like the kids are doing these days. Wow, I sound old. You know, but figure out what interests you about food or hospitality and why you're doing it, or at least try to understand why you're doing it. When I started my apprenticeship, I wanted a 3-star restaurant.
Yeah.
I wanted a 3-star restaurant in Australia. Do I want that anymore? No. But that was my goal, you know, because I got called out by the owner of the hotel in a whole hotel meeting about what we were going to do and transition to, and he literally looked at me. I'd been there maybe 2 weeks, and I was sat there in the ballroom with my arms crossed, and he said, "Why does it look like you don't want to be here?" And I said, "Because I don't."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Well, what?" And I was like, "Well, I've got all this stuff and jobs and work to do." And then he asked, he's like, "Yeah, but what do you want to get out of working here?" And I was like, "I want to become a chef. I've started here 3 weeks. I want to get a 3-star restaurant." You know? So figure out what you want out of this career. Otherwise, if it's just kind of like, oh, I'll cook for now or while I'm at uni or whatever, I love that. We need people in the industry like that. You know, that's not to discredit them. But this job will chew you up and spit you out if you don't really know why you're doing it. More so, I would say, than any other job.
Yeah.
Not that I can really comment to because I've never had any other job.
Wow, I feel like I could talk to you for hours because you've got a lot of stories to tell.
It's just because I don't know how to shut up, let's be honest.
But I'm going to let you go back to your Monday off. But thank you,
No,
Ben.
it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Conversation with a Chef with Ben Parkinson at Pipi's Kiosk. You can check out all the goodness on Instagram at Pipi's Kiosks. That's Pipiskiosk. There are some pretty amazing photos of sunsets, of course the incredible food, and some sparkling water. What more could you want? Oh, when I say sparkling water, I mean the sea. If you liked what you heard and you want to hear more stories from other chefs, I'm on Instagram at Conversation with a Chef. You can read the chat and become a subscriber, which is good for me because, well, I feel loved and like someone's actually reading it, and good for you because you get to know whenever there's a new conversation up. That's at I can't even say my own website, .conversationwithachef.com. I would love it, again, asking a lot of you today, but if you told a friend about my chats, and you can follow me on Apple and Spotify podcasts. Once again, thanks so much for listening. Have a great day and bon appetit.